Okay. Let's use a new sandbox, React. Okay, let's open a new React game. And we can hide this here. And let me expand the screen a little bit. Okay, cool. Okay, so what we're gonna do is remember when we click on a button, there's an on-click event, right? What if you have a input box? So in HTML, you can write input box like this. You will have an input, okay? And input box doesn't have closing. You usually don't provide a closing. So here's an input box. Okay. An input box doesn't have a closing tag, which means I can enter stuff here. Right, let's do that. If you want to look at a little bit more about the input box, you can say HTML input, and then the different kinds of input boxes are available, right? You can use a button as an input box. You can have a checkbox, color, date, and much more, right? So input box is only used for input box, but by default, when you just say input, the default type is text, which is this, as you can see, right? You don't have to really say type equal to text, but by default type is text. But you can use pretty much anything. For example, if I want to use, let's say, date, I would use this, and then okay, and then format this, and then you can see that it gives me a date, right? I can say pick a date, and this is how it works. So those who are very good at HTML can look at this and would know exactly how it works. But usually when I need to write any kind of HTML page, I usually refer to HTML documentation to understand what's going on, right? So you don't have to write your own widget like this. You can just use the what HTML provides, which is pretty robust. Okay. So I'm not going to use this input box for date for now. Okay. All right. And then we will have let's say have a button at the bottom here. Right. And then let's say submit. So we are building a form, but we're not using official form in a way. We are, so what's going to happen is I can type something. So this is a form. Remember when you go to any website, you'll have to, where you have to fill out information and then submit. Let's say you're creating a new profile, you have to say, your name, things like that, first name, last name, social security number, and all that stuff. They're using input box, right? And then there'll be a submit button, right? So when you click on a submit, it takes all the information and it submits it on the server, and so the profile gets created, right? So this is exactly the same concept. I can have a name, right? And submit. If I want to have a multiple fields, then I would have to set this class name as a how do I say, class name as a flex box, and then I can make a a column and then, put those values inside. So then it looks, they're not in a row basically. Okay. But for now, we're just going to use one. And then for the exercise, we can use multiple. All right, any questions? Let's all write this if you haven't done so. Let me know once you finish writing. Yeah, let me know once you're done. You can put it in chat. Make sure you get the similar view here.
I finished.
Pablo, Andy, what you guys? Coding is only can be learned by coding. So I would say code with me. That's the best way to learn. If you just read code, you won't learn much. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we need to define a state. There'll be two states, okay? So when I type something in, let's say if I type hello, right? What I want to do is while I type, I want to keep that state active, right? So as I type, it should take that and update the state, right? So that should be a one state that keep track of all the running values. And then second state is going to be when I submit, it should take that value and then save into a different state, right? So one would be the final and one would be the incomplete running state. So you can say import. Remember, we have to use useState, right, from React. So this is typical. You just have to write this, right? And then always write state inside this between the return and then this curly bracket, right? Here you would say const running that
hope our stuff doesn't get stolen.
Oh, you can. One of us can pick up for both of us.
I'll go down.
Hey Andy, I think you're okay, yeah, okay, cool. So we want to have an empty state like this, right? So we want to save this as we type, right? So how does that work? And then we can have another one called final. And I'm just going to say name, set name, which is the final state for the name, right? Okay. All right, so we have two states. I can actually, at the bottom here, I can actually print those two states. So let's say we can do, well, I'll probably have to, okay, so this is class name app. Let me go and change the style for this. Oh, you know what? I'm just going to wrap it with another div. Okay. And then I'm going to give it a class name equal to parent. Okay. Because I don't want, yeah, because I want this to be in this way, not in a single line, right? And this parent class, so let me write that. Parent class should be display. I want flex, and that's it. And then the flex direction is, let me see. Okay, you can have it something like this. Again, to make it work, we have to do a little bit more work. So it's reasonably.
Could you go back to the style sheet?
Sure, hold on.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let me explain. Have we gone through the flexbox? I forgot if we did. Have we learned a flexbox, by the way?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. So I'll explain how that works, but yeah, you can copy this for now.
I finished. Thank you.
Okay. And then inside the app, what you want is you want to wrap your content with a parent, which the class that we just created in style. And then we are saying make a column so they are, they're not in single line, right? And then I created a div so that these two lines are in the same line, and then this is in a separate line. Okay. Again, the objective is not to make it pretty for now, to make it functional, but it should look reasonable, right? Okay, so next thing we want to do is we just want to print, the the value. So I can say running. Well, let me just put another div here. Div min division, basically. Okay. So I want to say running equal to, and then running. This means it's gonna show me the running value here, right? So we haven't actually set anything. So we're gonna, right now we're not seeing anything, right? And then we also want to put final similarly. So I can say final, or just say called name equal to name. Okay, so right now both are empty because remember we set as an empty initially, so we have both empty.
Can I look at the styles again?
Sure. So this is what you want to add, parent.
When I stretch the display page,
Okay.
the button and the field also stretch with the screen, with the page.
Yes, this, right?
Yes, like that. But the name field is exactly the same length with the submit button.
Right. And that's because I mean we can style it the way we like it, right? That's because it's got two things inside, right? And then I wrapped it with another div. So it was just an input. So if I put another input here, for example, it would stretch, you see? But because I put it inside a div, the div is expanded. So this actually, you don't see it, but everything kind of stretches. So this div is actually also stretched. The button is also stretched. These are all stretched. And then to find out if it's stretched, if I just add a, let's say, class name here as well, right? Let's say name field or something. And then if I go inside the style and add some styles to name field, and I can say color, let's say border is 1 pixel solid red. Okay, you see it's actually expanded, but we don't see it. So this is also whole, this div, right? So everything is expanded, right? And that's because it's when you have a column, it always takes 100% of the width. Okay, but within this, when I put something in, it flows naturally, because when you put something side by side, it doesn't take 100%. But when you put it alone as a separate row, it always expands. Does it make sense? If
Yes.
I don't want it to expand it, all I have to do is if I just put a div around it, it's not going to expand. That's it. You see? Like that. Yeah. I'm just going to take off the name field for now. Our objective is not to style it properly. Objective, so you understand the functionality for now. We can style it. I'll show you how to style this once we're done. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, so that's why the CSS part is very important to learn, right? If you want to do this, you need to have a really good grasp of CSS. That's why the one we are looking at, this flexbox, is very important line. I'll see what I can do today. If we can finish this early, I can cover a little bit of flexbox, and then this way you know exactly how to style. Just maybe 5 or 6 different things that you need to learn that allows you to put anything on the screen and control it, basically. Okay, so that's that. So you have a submit button, but we haven't actually wired anything up, right? So we have 2 states. We have a running and a name, but we haven't wired anything up. So let's wire it up. So when I type inside here, right, the input box, remember how we have a on click event but there's an on change event for input boxes, and the on change event is pretty interesting. What happens is, as you can say, whenever it changes, I want to update the state. So inside the input button, I can say on change equal to, and I can set it to some handle. So I can say handle name change, right? And we don't have a handle yet, but we can write one. So, which is nothing but a function. Remember, all handles are functions. So we can say function handle change and that, right? Which means when I type, so let's say if I can actually see what happens. Print, let's say if I say changing, okay. Oh, not print, sorry. Console.log changing. And if I look at the console, if I type it in, you see it says changing here. Okay. But it's not saying what's changing, it just says changing, right? Which means the event is working. So when I type inside, it on changing is calling this handle, and this handle basically gets executed, and it just doesn't have anything yet. It just it runs as console log, which means it prints this here, right? So now what we need to do is now we need to capture what has changed, right? So if somehow this can give us the what has changed, right? So let's understand how the change works in React. Whenever there's a change, React actually sends a parent saying, hey, this has changed, right? So there's something called target. So if there's a multiple things that are changing, each one of them has target associated with it, right? And you can actually say, okay, if this is my target. So let's look at the way to capture it. Target. Okay, and if I just can grab the value from it, see now as I type it in, you can see the A is changing. So here it gives me. Okay. So it gives you something called target, and then you can grab the value from it. So it has way more fields, but I'm just grabbing the target from that, and it gives me the value. So what I can do is I can take that value, and I can say set running to target.value, right? Right. So now if I type, you see the running is changing here as well. You see? So this is not a full name, it's a partial name. So let's say the name is John. It's changing here, right? Because what I did, I said when the input changes, run this handle. So this handle gets called, and when I'm typing it, it publishes this target from where it's running this, right? And then I can grab the value from it. Okay. And then so when I type J, for example, as soon as I type J, the target or dot value is J. So I take that and then I set the running. So right, so this running is J now. And so what happens is because I'm saying set running, which is remember anytime you set the state, it has to repaint the whole thing, right? So it sets the running equal to J and then repaints the whole screen. And so wherever I have defined running, which is here, right, it's going to get updated with J, right? So now if I say, oh, it does the same thing, right? Okay, so at some point I realized, okay, I've finished writing the whole name inside, right? And then all I need to do is submit. So when I submit it, it can take that value, John, and it can submit it, right? At that point, I can just set the my state name, right? So this is much simpler, similar to how we've been doing, right? So on click event equal to, I can say handle on submit, right? And then I can create another function here called handle on submit, right? So for on submit, I don't have to grab anything. I already have the state running, right? So let's say if the state is John, I can then simply take set name equal to whatever the running is, right? So at that point, so let's try that. So let's say as I'm typing J, running is J, right? Name is nothing because I haven't submitted it yet. John. So I finished typing. Now I know that this is something I want to submit. I'm just gonna click on it, and what happens? It sets the name to whatever the running was, which is John, and then I have John as the final name. Okay. So now if I change this to Peter, you see the running is changing, name is not changing. Name only changes when I submit it, right? So I would say I submitted wrong name, so I'm just going to change the Peter, and the Peter gets updated, right? Any question on this one? You can finish writing this one. Just try to understand the concept, right? That's the most important thing. If you understand the concept, coding becomes very easy. Um, don't focus on the syntax too much. Syntax, understand the concept, right? That this is a form. As I type some stuff in, I'm having this state called running, which keeps track of that state, right? And then when I click on submit, it takes that state and then creates a new state, which is name, right? So this is in a way like a partial name. This is a full name. Let me know once you finish typing this in. I think we have 20 minutes more left, so we can actually cover some. I think let's cover the flexbox, which is more fun. Finish writing?
Not yet.
And always always select the name of the these handles. Always start with the handle, so you know this is a handle, because whenever you have like a click event, you are using handle to use that, right? So because you might have another function that looks maybe doing something else, but handle kind of tells you that this is attached to an event.
When I click on the submit button
Mhm.
and enter the name, it doesn't do anything.
Um,
I can't see the code on the screen.
okay. Do you have these two things?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Do you want to share your screen quickly?
Well, I can. I'm using another computer for coding, but I can copy and paste my.
Yeah, put it in the chat. Yeah. This is what you want to do with this line. This is where the issue is. You need to wrap it with the curly brackets. And the reason for this is what happens when you do the handle name change, right? When you type stuff inside the input box, it actually submits, it gives you the whole input box in the it just passes the whole thing inside, right? So with whatever you're typing, it passes the whole thing, right? So then you grab the value from it. And so target is one of the values. So if I, for debugging purpose, if I simply use, let's say, whatever, let's say if I say whole thing. Okay, let's say the whole input box, whole input. Okay, I take this and console log the whole input. Okay, and then let's say if I type something in, let's say John, right? You can see that here it gives me this synthetic event, right? And it basically gives you the whole thing, whole input box. And it's got so many different properties. And one of the properties is called target, which is input, right? So I need to grab this property. So let's say if I want to grab this property, the best way to do this, it's something called deconstruction. So I can either grab it like this. Okay. This way it just gives me target from here. So let me try this again. It gives me the whole input now. Okay. And the input, actually, this doesn't show you pretty clearly. If I just go to this inspect on the browser and look at the console inspect. Let's say instead of console log, I'm going to say dir to look at things more clearly. I can see all the values here. So inside I would have something called value, and I can see that it's got this John, right? So this when I have a handle change, it just gives me the whole handle inside. Say, hey, here you go. What you're looking for is inside somewhere here, right? And so for that event, there's a target, and then target has a value, right? So I can actually, when you do set running, I can say, the whole input dot target dot value. This is one way of getting it, right? And it is exactly the same thing. But what I did is there's something called deconstruction. And the deconstruction is if this has a property called target, I can write it like this. Target, and then I don't have to like use this. I can just simply say whatever you're passing in, grab the target from it and then grab the value from it. Okay, so this is one way of getting it. Okay. Any question on this one? So that's why you are not getting it, because it just passes the whole thing, which is a target and a value. Or you can just, as I said, if you're not comfortable with this syntax, you can just say whatever the event is, you can just pass the event, and just you can say from the event, I'm going to grab the target, and then from that target, I'm going to grab the value. Remember when we learned about the objects, the event has a property called target, target has a property called value. And that's how you grab it. Okay, so whatever I'm typing in, it's coming here. All right. So that's that. Okay, so now that you know this, any question on this one? You can build pretty much any form using this, right? So for example, let's say if you want to build name, and let's say if I want to build social security, socio, let's say SSN, right? I can, I would need to create another 2 of these variables. I would call this like a running SSN, and the second I would have SSN, and it would be associated with this field, and there'll be another one called handles SSN change. Same way, like you just have to duplicate this code, right? Yeah, so you can build any kind of form where user can interact with this application, right? Okay, so let's understand the remember the flex. This is something very important to learn. So let's start there, and then we can look at it. This is probably, if you ever been to an HTML class, I would want you to throw everything that you learn and learn this. This would change your perspective on things. So for that, I'm going to go to CodePen, because it's easier to see there, right? Because of the HTML CSS part. And here I would just hide the JavaScript for now. Okay. We're going to learn flexbox. Flexbox, what it does, it helps you do layouting. What is a layouting really means? So for example, like this is a web page, right? See how these buttons are on this side, this thing is this side. How do you control all of these, right? Because when you put stuff on the web pages, they're just going anywhere, right? And a lot of times, if you're new, you have no idea what's going on and how to control that. So what I want you to learn is how to control this. So the concept, one concept is, have you seen this? What is it called? Like some rich people or normal people have it as well. Well, not a cupboard. Let's say you have a cabinet, right? You have a cabinet with some spices and some forks and some spoon and all that stuff, right? How do you make sure that they don't mix it up, or if you add something, it just things don't fall out? By creating smaller compartments, right? So if you create a smaller compartment and then put stuff inside, if you do something in a one compartment, it doesn't impact the other compartment, right? So the objective is to create compartments. And then this web page is not a single thing, right? It's got a compartment. So if I look at it, actually, let me do one thing. Okay. Imagine if this is the thing, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create that shape. So let's say this is my web page, the entire web page, right? This is the body of my HTML. Okay. And let's say I want to build this website. So how do I approach it? So I already see that there are three compartments. If you think this as a cabinet in your kitchen, I can see that it's separated by 3 rows. This is row 1, right? This is a row 2, and this is a row 3, right? So let's do that. I'm going to create 3 rows using, well, I'm going to create a new container here. I'm going to use this. I'm going to create 3 rows. Okay. All right. So I've created 3 rows. And I can control this now, right? So I can say, okay, it's easier to control something inside something, but it's really hard to control many different things, different type of things within a one container, right? So now I have this first one. The first one is tiny, right? So I'm gonna reduce this size to this, and then this goes here like this. Okay. Now, if you look at here, so the bottom one is pretty simple. It's just a one, there's nothing inside. But the middle one has 2 things, this container and then this container, right? So I can write another one here, right? I can say, okay, this one and this one, right? So that is within this middle container. But what about the top container? So top container has actually 3 separate containers, which is one is this area and this empty area that you don't see, right? And then this area. So I'm going to create 3 containers here. Oops. I'm going to create 3 containers. So one is going to be the left side. I'm going to pick this color. Right? Actually have 2. Let's have 2. That's fine. I can have 2. I could have 3, but I'm going to have 2 for now. So in this one, they're sitting on opposite side, right? That's it. And then now, if I want to put these buttons, inside the other one, it becomes much simpler, right? Because I have a container which then I can, use to put this stuff. Right? So on and so forth. Right? So whenever you build any kind of a web page, you want to go through this exercise where you break your application into rows or columns, right? So if you notice, either I put stuff as rows or columns, right? So the first container, which is a black, inside I have 3 rows, right? The middle one has 2 columns. The top one has 2 columns. And this one has 4 columns. So it's a rows inside a column, inside a row, inside a column, and so on and so forth. And that's how you want to control the elements, right? So if you can put stuff as rows or columns and control things inside, you can achieve what you wanted to do. Okay, so let's start. Maybe we may not be able to finish this, but let's just start this. So I'm going to write a div. Okay, and I'm going to give it a class name. But remember, in here, we don't say class name, we say class. In React, we have to call it class name. And the class, I'm going to call it parent. Okay. So I've created a container, and inside I can put multiple things. So let's put div, let's say A, and then B and C. Yeah, so type this in. If you look at it, this is how it renders at the bottom. Okay. So I'm going to show you how to control this. And also, let's also do one thing. Give it a class name. Class equal to, let's say, child. And I'm going to give the same class name to each of these guys. All right. Let me know once it's finished typing. Okay. So by default, things are, like blocks. As I said, you don't see them as a block because this is invisible, right? But it's actually taking the whole space. Whenever things are as blocks, it takes the whole space off. And to prove it, I can actually go here and then use the child class, which is this class. And then if I provide a border of 1 pixel, solid, and let's say red, you would see this, right? It's an illusion that they are just like here on the left side, but it's actually covering the whole space. Okay. So, but we don't want this. This is a default configuration. If you want to look at what is the, there's a property on each of these called, if I go and look at it, there's a called display called block. Okay. Block is like, you know, when in a Lego, when you have a block kind of, you have to stack on each, top of each other, right? And that's a block, right? So these are like blocks. This is an old way of doing things. It was much more difficult. It's very hard to understand. The new way is using something called flex. Flex means flexible. Okay. So this flex has changed the game. How you do things is much simpler. It gives you much more power and very few syntax. Okay. So I'm going to go here and add a parent. Okay. Let me know if you finished typing. Sorry, I went ahead. Lily, you finished, done typing? Let me know.
Not yet.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, finish it. Yeah.
I finished.
Okay. So you can always, so when you create a parent, which means you have created a container, right? There's one property you need to add, and the property is called display, and you call it flex. That makes the whole thing flexible. You can see the whole arrangement change to this. Okay. This is saying that, okay, I'm going to use this flexible model on my children, basically. And the default now, instead of the block, it's column or row, right? And then let's look at it again. If I inspect this, And there's a direction called flex direction, which is default. It's a row. So row means it contains column, but itself is a row, right? Right? A row is a single line like this, right? So you can see the flex direction. There's a property called flex direction, right? Which is row, which is a default. So even if you don't do it, it's automatically row, right? So if you want your children to be in a row, you just say flex direction is a row. If your children needs to be as column, then you would just say flex direction into as column, and then you get the previous view. Okay. Row and column. When it's a row, it doesn't occupy the whole space, right? Because you need to support multiple. That's why all of them only occupy space based on its content. So A only occupies a space of A, right? If I have like, let's say Abra, then it will take the space of Abra, right? So it depends on the content. How big is your content, right? But it only occupies a space that it needs. Okay. But when you have a flex direction as a column, it occupies the entire space. And the text itself is always in the left side. Okay. So this is the behavior. But let's just keep it to be a row. Okay. What other options do we have? So the other options are I can have column reverse, row reverse. Okay. So if I say right now it's row, right? And I can say row reverse. So reverse. When I say row reverse, it actually mirrors the whole thing, right? Which means A was on the left side. Now A is on the right side. It's literally flips on a reverse like that. Okay. I would say don't use this unless you really have to. I would just use row, right? Because the order is defined and you want it that way. But it's the option is there if you need to use it. Okay. But if it's a column, and then I can say column reverse, and it does exactly the same thing. It actually flips the order, right? D becomes top, right? DCBA. All right, any questions? Okay, there's actually a game. Let's play the game. We may not be able to finish it, but Froggy Flexbox. It's called Flexbox Froggy. Let's do this. Let's play this game. Okay. So I want you to, so you see, this is a pond. Okay. And inside I have three children, which I have three, well, these guys, sorry, three children. I want to put them in this on this leaf. So I can use flex direction. You know, if I say row, it's going to give you 1. And well, I think this. I think this also requires. So if you did that, then they become like this, right? But you also needs to justify content, which you haven't learned. Oh, you know what? I think I'm way ahead. I think you guys are on level. Yeah, it was a level 1. Okay, let me. Okay, let's learn about this first one. Justify content. Okay, so so I'm just gonna keep it flex and justify content. Okay, and the options are start. Okay, start means on the left side. So whatever your content is, I want to keep it on the left side, right? Then it keeps it on the left side. If I say end, it keeps it on the right side. You see, it moved here to the right side. If I say center, it goes in a center. Okay, so it has a flex start, which is the left side, flex end, which is the right side, center is in the middle, right? But there are other options. What if I want them to be spreaded so that they're equal distance? So I can say space between. Is there a space between? Hold on, let me see.
Mm,
Missing the E.
Oh, I'm missing an E. Oh yeah. Space between. Then it kind of put themselves. So within a container, I can adjust stuff, right? I can say, you know, put it on the left, put it on the center, put it on the right, or just space them apart. The space between basically gives equal space between each element. But as you can see, there's no space on the right side or left side. Okay, so let's say if this is a long string, for example, it will adjust itself. You see, still now there's an equal space between them. So even if the content changes, you'll have, you know, space changing. So let's use that information to put that froggy in the leaf. I already gave you the hint anyway. So this is my froggy. I need to put it here. So I need to say justify content to the right, which is the flex end. So you can say flex. Oh, I can say justify content flex end. And it puts a froggy in here. Okay. The next one. Shoot, I've already done all of these. So this one is level 2. So I want them inside here, right? So obviously I know that this would be justify content center, right? Like this. Let's learn a few more before we end. This is a good topic to discuss, finish it next time. But we're just gonna learn justify contact today. So space between, basically put equal space between them, right? But what if we want the space around them as well? So you can say space around. And that actually gives you space, a little bit space on the both side. Okay. And between. But the space around is half the size. So let's say the distance between C and a D is double the distance between the D and the end. So this is half the distance between C and D. So on the edges, it gives you half the distance. So the way it adjusted itself. Okay, look, that's called space around. And if you want equal distance everywhere, on the side and the middle and everywhere, you would say space. I think it's called space evenly. Okay, now it's everywhere. So you have three things. Space, space between gives you equal space in between, but no space around. Space around gives you some space around, but it's like half of what you have in the middle. And then space evenly gives you space evenly across. The best one is, space between. And then, you can control the space outside. This gives you the maximum output, right? In a way, but depends on the situation. You can use either of them. So I would say go through this Froggy, maybe level 3, and where you have to use all of these. This is really good exercise to learn. Yeah, if you can learn all 24, you can put stuff anywhere on the page. Okay. Any questions? All right. So today we learned a little beginning of the flexbox, and then we also learned about onchange event, right? Where for the input box, when things changes, we can set the state, right? Using the targeted value. All right. Any last question before we end?
Do we have any homework?
How about this? I think we. How about I'll give you some homework. I don't have a homework. I think for the flexbox, since we haven't covered the whole thing, I can't give you homework on flexbox, but yeah, I'll give you some homework on the input box. I'll give you a form to build, okay, with all the state. But probably by end of today, I'll give it to you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. See you guys next week.
See you.
Bye.